So
That's funny.
I love it. But it's great to
Yeah.
meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into the music. So thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazzing.
Oh, thank you. And I love your background. Where did
Oh,
that come from?
thank you. I'm a visual artist, so that's one of my originals. That's
Okay.
it's the
I love
sky.
it.
Yeah, it's the skyline of downtown Kansas City.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's a little
That's
embellished,
awesome.
but it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
yeah. Well, thank you. So let's begin our journey with this. I would start with
Okay.
this question. 6
Sure.
years ago, this pandemic was changing so much about all of our lives. It was a real
Yes.
crossroads for us. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you create and approach things today?
Oh, goodness. You know, when I was going through the pandemic, I thought I was doing swimmingly because I had moved out to a farm in Brentwood, Tennessee to support some older friends of mine. They're like in their 80s and 90s. And I thought, okay, this is great. This gives me a respite from normal city life. I'm out on the farm but I was running my own company and I had been doing music diligently until the pandemic. I mean, like my band and I were playing out. We had a residency. We were doing, all that, and everything just came to a crashing halt. And now looking back, I'm like, that really messed me up. Um, and I didn't really realize then how much. I guess all of us were just powering through, trying to survive the best we could, mentally and emotionally and financially and every other way. Um, but it took a toll for sure. And it has probably taken me until now to really get my feet back under me because I mean, I had to take other jobs and just juggle so much to get things stabilized again. I think the way that it's changed me is, well, I definitely stock more toilet paper in my closet because don't ever want to run out of Trader Joe's toilet paper.
Yeah.
But I also just am committed to living life to the fullest because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And between that and my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's around the same time as the pandemic happened. So we first started noticing his decline in 2019, and then he and mom moved to Florida from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. They moved in December of 21 when we were still in the midst of the pandemic. So between the pandemic and my dad's diagnosis, it just has taught me you got to live every moment
Yeah.
with gusto. You can't miss anything. Like, don't leave anything on the table.
Yeah.
And so I would say, especially these past 9 months, 10 months, I've been doing just that. And there's greater freedom and joy and confidence and a whole lot of productivity.
So, talk to me a little bit about My Superman. It's a precursor to the new album. Talk to me a little bit about what your vision was. What was your idea with the sound and approach to the album?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm a big fan of Daniel Caesar, if you know his work.
Yeah.
And he has a song that inspired the sound for My Superman. And it was really how do we communicate the raw vulnerability of these are my emotions around this intimate family issue, being my dad's Alzheimer's, um, and tell the story of what's happening while at the same time communicating the love that's there, as well as this. What I've learned is that the more vulnerable I am, the more it gives people a space to own what I'm saying,
Yeah.
which it was this aha moment for me when I was writing for this project. Um, so it's just really the bearing of my heart in honor of my father.
It's interesting. I think about Alzheimer's, dementia, that level of cognitive um, placement that people get into in life. And my son's on the spectrum. And we at one point volunteered at a senior center, and they did aerobics with patients that had dementia and Alzheimer's. And at one point, the coordinator came over and said they're remembering your son, which was a pretty big deal. They would be excited and they would recognize him. And I kept thinking how wonderful that parallel world was, because I had no idea about that community and how they roll and what was going on. And the same thing with my son. It really opens your chambers up when you experience something like that. And it feeds into not only your daily life but your creativity. So
Mhm.
what has, like, really realizing your father's diagnosis, how is that altered and enhanced or added to what you're doing as a creative?
Man, you're really good with these questions.
Thank you.
Um, I would say the first is being really honest about my grief.
Yeah.
And as you said, when we are able to tap into those deep places emotionally, it really opens us up creatively. And so, and I would say, I mean, I've been through some stuff in my lifetime. Um, I've kept until now, I've kept things at arm's length, right? Because it was, and that showed in the types of songs that I wrote, even in the way that I sang. So when I was willing to embrace the grief, it did indeed help me to open up more. Uh, I don't know. It's a really interesting process. It's hard to put into words, honestly, but I have to let myself go there. Um, and then I end up creating something beautiful. And I'm a visual artist too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's happened for me, not just with my music, but in my art. So like, I don't know if you can see this painting right here.
Yeah. I love it. I saw it in the corner. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
going to ask about it.
So that's a painting that I just did. I probably finished it end of May, beginning of June, but it's in honor of a friend of mine who also a musician, a drummer named Tito Walker, who just passed away.
Wow.
And Tito was a champion of all of us artists. And he not only when he played with us, but he would advocate for us at local venues here in Nashville, which being Music City, you need somebody who goes to bat for you because there are so many people wanting to play out. And Tito was that champion for me and for so many others.
So speaking of art, between songs and visual arts, we're living in a very weird time in America right now. And I don't want to sound like the old guy in the room, but man, it's like a clown show day after day after day. And I feel like, kind of like in the 60s, there was always this social glue that musicians and artists put in between all of us to make us feel connected. So we didn't swim too far out past the buoy. And I'm wondering, in everything that you do as a creative force, are you thinking more about giving people a respite, some comfort, some level of feeling like we're not so lost in the forest in this America of 2026? Is that something that's going through your mind?
It always has been.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened for me is that I've made the connection, as weird as it may sound. It was around February of 25 and I was working through a whole lot of family issues from one of my kids had dealt with addiction stuff. And it kind of highlighted my own tendency for codependency. And so I was deep in therapy. I was going to Al-Anon family meetings. I was doing the work, right? And so somewhere in the midst of this, my counselor and I had these sessions, and it was like, oh, I'm an artist. And I finally admitted it to myself. And then I started telling other people, and they're like, of course you are. And I was like, you mean you knew this all along? I didn't even know it. And they're like, yeah, we know this about you. And as soon as I again embraced that and held it close, it set me free, right? And what I've realized is that when I look back at the last 30 years of my life, or however long that I've been singing, it's like Oh, I've always used art as a means of social justice. I've always used art as a means of calling people's attention to the issues that really matter in our world, whether that's about children or mental health and well-being or family or community activism. Like I've always done that because my music has run parallel with the work that I've done for kids in mental health and well-being called Love in a Big World. And music was the impetus for doing that work. And so it was just this revelation of like, that's part of the charge that we have as artists, is to call the collective unconscious back to what it means to be human.
So on paper, I would think that you were born with the DNA of being a creative. It would just appear that, right?
Yes.
So let's go back to your beginnings. How did this happen? How did you evolve to this creative point? Was it always a dream? Was it always written in your star map that this was going to be your life?
Yes. I love how you said that because I'm a big believer that what you played as a child is part of what you're called to do
Yeah.
in this world. And so I remember being down in the basement of my house in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with my best friend Monica, and we put on the 45s or the big albums, and it was like Donna Summer and Barbara Streisand, Barry Manilow, the Grease soundtrack, a little Elvis Presley, a little Once, Twice, Three Times a Lady. I mean, like a little Joe Cocker. Like it was all this stuff, right? And that's what we played. We sang into our hairbrush microphones. We had our full set list. We had our baby dolls lined up on the couch. So it was always for me this I'm going to sing and be creative, and I'm also going to be a mom, which I am. And then also the writing. Like I remember, so Netflix just released a new version of Little House on the Prairie. And as a kid, I was an avid Little House on the Prairie watcher. And some of the first stories that I wrote were pioneer stories in the vein of Laura Ingalls Wilder. And so it's always been part of me to create, and I'm really thankful that for whatever reason things stood in my way, whether it was fear or shame or just life or motherhood, whatever. I finally have embraced who I am and able to do that more fully.
So when I was a kid, I made a bet on Monday Night Football between the Houston Oilers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I picked Pittsburgh for some reason. So I was always kind of indoctrinated into this Steelers fandom, and I had all this stuff. And I remember I had this old sweatsuit that I wore as a kid, and the patch was falling off. And I remember ripping the patch off and giving it to a girl that I had a crush on at the time. That was my big Pittsburgh moment. But I hear so much about the town, and I've never been there. And I
Mhm.
think about Fred Rogers, and I think about Mary Lou and all of that legacy. Is that really thick in the air there? Their legacies?
Yes, it
Yeah,
is. It is. And jazz is huge
yeah.
in Pittsburgh. Like, and I grew up in a non-denominational, multicultural church where the musicians that were playing every Sunday were professional jazz musicians. And so I heard all of that all the time. And by the age of 13, I was playing my flute by ear along with all the musicians. And I didn't, like, how sometimes you just live life and you really don't realize the impact that what you're doing at the moment will have
Yeah.
on you for a lifetime. I didn't realize at the age of 13 that standing up there with, George Furlow and Warren Yagi and his wife, like I didn't realize how all of that kind of saturated me. It was like osmosis. And just with their saxophone and their flute and their clarinet and just how they riff and and the B3 organ going and all of that was thick in my center, right? But it was also it was just all around the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I think Mary Lou may have been one of the best jazz musicians of all time, easily. And being black and being a woman was definitely at that time in history like a place that was suffocating. And she spent a lot of time in Kansas City. There was a star on our
Mhm.
18th and Vine Walk of Fame. And I interviewed somebody that wrote a really long timeline of the Kansas City jazz scene, and she ended up going on tour, and she would always have this box with all of the heirlooms from her early life, just things that were precious, and somebody stole them on a tour bus, and that's why she quit.
Oh,
She
wow.
finally was done with people taking her stuff. And
Yeah.
I think how heartbreaking that was. But I also, when you look at her timeline, I think she got really spiritual after that and she found a different way in life. But anyway, I think when I think about the lineage of musicians, anybody in jazz, she was one of the best ever. And
Mm.
I always find that. And Kansas City and Pittsburgh have always had a really good, unique relationship because of that between, Mary Lou and all of that. So
Mhm.
it's interesting.
Mhm.
Um, so let me ask you this. What do you love the best about creating? What is it that gets you up every day to not only create music, but to create art? What is the inner gears of the clock within you that make you do that?
Mm. Freedom.
Yeah.
Um, it's taken me a long time to get to that point too, to just realize like it's not about applause. It's not about anybody telling me that I'm doing a good job. It's like I have to create because it's just who I am. And when I'm creating, whether it's a painting or whether it's a song or whether it's a story, it's just being who I'm created to be, that and expressing that freedom um without fear, without shame. Mhm.
And being a creative and being able to create visuals and writing and music, you got this split zygote that exists for you. How
Yes.
much how much of those lean on each other? How I mean, like with the painting behind you,
Hmm.
are there a lot of times where after you create a painting, it will spark an idea for a song, or a song, vice versa, will create a spark for you to paint? How does that work? How does that hybrid work for you?
Yeah, they very much interplay. So with the EP that we're releasing, and we're doing a waterfall. So we did the song My Superman first in May, and then yeah, that was May. And then the next one was Break My Fall. We paired, and then the one that's coming out later this month is called What If I Was Wrong. We paired a painting with each song,
Cool.
because they connect, right? And then I also did a writing for each song, because music can draw people in to read in a way that maybe a painting wouldn't. And so just finding the interplay between all of those different mediums, um, yeah, it definitely goes back and forth. Like after Tito's passing, and I'm still like talking to him almost every day. Um, I didn't know. Like he's our age, right? He was my friend, he was my buddy, and we saw each other at gigs all the time. Um, and to have somebody gone, it was like, how do I process that grief? Well, I got to put it on a canvas.
I get that.
Yeah. So I think different situations call for different things. Last year it was my grandson he'll be 2 in August, but it was his birthday, and we have a very fractured family system going on over here. And my my kid's dad and I are divorced, and all 3 of my kids are adopted, and so it just makes life really interesting. But my daughter wanted to have a joint first birthday party. Yeah. So I was I was really
Yeah.
feeling all the feels.
Uh-huh.
And before going to the party, I wept for a long time. And then I started writing these songs, and they just like poured out of me.
Yeah.
And one of them was a song for my grandson called Champion. And yeah, I think you just have to grab what medium is calling you at the moment.
Yeah.
I have to do a lot of internal listening, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Where do I need to be right now? And I found that it always helps if I have a canvas going in my studio,
Yeah.
so that if I get stuck on one thing, I can run there and, put a
Yeah.
little something on and then go back and it helps open me up to see more clearly.
That makes sense. So, what was the first live concert that you saw that blew you away, that left an indelible mark on the way that you would approach your music?
Okay, you might laugh at me,
Okay.
but because I was like 12
Yeah.
and I went to see Amy Grant.
Oh, yeah. No, I used to like Amy Grant growing up. Yeah.
I mean, she is an incredible
Oh,
singer-songwriter.
she is. She's really, really good.
I just saw her at Christmas time at the Ryman Auditorium, which is, our famous venue here in
Yeah.
Nashville. And what blew me away about Amy, even after all this time, is she is a more than a singer, she's a communicator.
Yeah.
Like she knows how to create this environment that draws people in.
Sure.
And so even as a 12-year-old, I was drawn in by the power that she had to bring this whole, couple thousand people audience into this moment of being moved. I mean, she's a master at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just looking her up recently because I heard Baby Baby on like a speaker at a grocery store, and I was like, I haven't heard that forever. But when I was in high school, I came to a spiritual crossroads. So I was listening to a lot of that, Michael W. Smith, that ilk,
Yeah.
that genre. And but I remember that album, Heart in Motion, I believe it was. I think that
Hmm.
was her big album. I listened to that thing a billion times. Like every
There's
time
so much good stuff on there.
the whole thing was like it was hit after
Yep.
hit after hit. And
Yep.
yeah, did she marry Tim? Who did she marry? Tim McGraw?
It's skill.
Vince Gill, that's right. And she's
Mhm.
still with him?
Yep.
Okay,
And they
interesting.
love each other so much.
Oh yeah.
And that was obvious because they were on stage at the Ryman together, and you could just tell the way they looked at each other. There's
Yep.
just so much love. And honestly, you would think that maybe being in Nashville, I was a country fan. I'm not.
Right.
I'm jazz, R&B, soul. But so this was the first time that I heard Vince
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
live. And I was like, he is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And he's got so much soul.
Yep.
I was absolutely blown away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. When you decide that you want to go after this life of being a musician or an artist, you have this dream, this idea of how it's going to possibly happen, to wake up every day being a creative. But then there's the reality of what actually happens when you get to that point. What's been the
Mhm.
difference between the idealized notion of you entering this world as a creative and living this life? What's that gray area?
Been vastly different. Because I moved to Nashville when I was 22, and I thought that I was going to become a recording artist and do all the things from jump when I got to town. And Nashville served my butt to me on a platter when I was little. And that caused me to go into hiding. Like there were for a multitude of factors, but it really made me question myself creatively. And that's when I started the work of Love in a Big World. And it was okay, well, if I don't fit the mold of the industries that were represented at the time in town, let me create something. I mean, I was really an indie artist before being an indie artist was cool. And
Yeah.
I didn't know it. And I created this whole nonprofit organization, and we toured all over the country and sold product and had grants. Like we did this whole thing. And again, I was so in it day to day that I didn't realize what I was doing. Like, and so now with some distance, I look back and I go, oh, that was really cool. Like you did that, and you got to be with all these kids and families and communities and reach like a million people all over the world. And um, yeah, but that's not what I saw for myself. I saw for myself that I would be on tour and doing stuff like the artists that I admired when I was a kid, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and see any live show ever, where are you going? Who would you love to see?
Ella Fitzgerald
Okay.
in the 1940s at the Cotton Club or somewhere in Harlem. Mhm.
See, mine would be the first time she went on stage at the Apollo as a little kid and went to that contest and just blew them away. That would be crazy because, you're walking into a lion's den at the Apollo,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember when I went to Nashville, I went to the Grand Ole Opry, and I remember seeing it on TV a lot when I was growing up. But there was something wonderful about walking through there and feeling it's such a iconic house
Mhm.
of music for America. Have you been in there and done the tour?
It's been a long time, but yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Really is. So let me ask you this. Everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, fans, everyone that knows you in varying capacities, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, it's so funny you asked that because I think I was just having this conversation with myself as I was getting out of the shower today. And I was like, so people have this image of me that isn't what I think of me at all.
Yeah,
Like I still feel like in a lot of ways, I still feel like a kid who's singing along with a hairbrush and then going outside to climb trees and playing hide and go seek in the dark. That childlikeness, and I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing.
yeah, no. I remember an interview John Mayer did after he got really, really big, and it was on
I
some
love
like,
him.
yeah, he's amazing. And
Mhm.
and it was on one of those like Dateline things, but he just got big. This was back in the 2000s. And his quote was, I used to, in my bedroom growing up, I used to play like I was playing in front of 60,000 people, 100,000 people. And now that I play in front of 100,000 people, I just want to go back into my room and play for myself. And it's that idea. It's like never losing sight of that little version of you that grew up and all the dreams you had and everything.
Mhm.
So, if anybody wants to pick up My Superman, any of your work, your art, catch you live, any of the good business, where do they go?
TamaraRivelle.com.
Okay, okay,
And you can follow along at Tamara Rivelle on Instagram.
okay. I
And
will
there's all
make it
kinds
easy.
of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, I will make it easy. I will put links in the show notes. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. Best of luck
Oh,
with
thank
everything.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you bet.
Neon Jazz.